All right. Hi. Good morning. How are you?
Good.
We have a huge session this morning. Yeah, you're here for the Multilingual Makeover. We're going to be doing a side-by-side comparison of modules in Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. Bonjour, hello, ciao, salut. The other part of the we is not here, but I wanted to keep Kristen Pohl on this deck. Normally I'd give this session with my co-founder, Kristen Pohl, who wrote the Drupal 7 Multilingual Sites book for Packet. She's the CTO and architect of our company, and she's been doing Drupal since 2004. I'm going to be being Kristen's role, which represents Drupal 7. I'll be also representing Drupal 8. My name is Aimee Degnan. The name is changing. I'm with the CEO and also another architect. And I've been doing Drupal since 2008, multilingual websites since 1996. And I'm writing and finishing the D8 multilingual sites book. Who are you in this room? Who's a Drupal newbie? Oh, we have one. Who's a Drupal intermediate? We have a couple. Who's a Drupal veteran? Who's seen some scars?
I've seen things.
Yeah, we've got some people who have seen things. Who identifies as a site builder? Got a couple of those. Project manager? Got a couple. Yeah, a little bit of probably everything. A themer? Yeah. Developer? How about all the roles? Yeah. And who actually feels that they know how to do multilingual pretty well? Oh, we have that room that is pretty good at multilingual. So which Drupal do you use? 7? Who uses 7? Still, yeah. And who uses 8? Okay, so everybody probably has used both. Who actually uses Drupal 6? Yeah, there's some of us that haven't touched it. For migrations, of course. Migrations off. But no, there's people still use it. And so multilingual is very interesting now in Drupal 8. But if for even a comparison of both the different versions, let's talk about the 4 pillars of multilingual. First of all, it's built on a language, on language first. Then it's the interface, right? It's all of the sign-in and the sign-out, or the login and the log-out, and the labels. Then you have your content, which is your articles, your media, your blog. That's all of the stuff you make. Then you also have your config. This is vocabulary names and views and that type of thing. Put them all together, it provides a multilingual platform for development and content creation. So let's talk language. Hola, hello. First of all, what is language? It's not just what we talk to each other with. It has codes. Language is all about codes. So first of all, language is not just language. Language is identified with a language code, but also language changes per region and per municipality, right? Because French in Belgium is different than French in Canada. It's different than French in Switzerland and France and Luxembourg and Monaco. So French is different for the people that use it within their regional context, right? And so what are the similarities in language between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8? First of all, you can add, edit, and remove languages, right? You get pre-configured languages, and then you also have custom language support. You can make your own French France, or you can make your own Klingon type of thing. You can associate content with language, but in Drupal 7, it's sometimes is not as direct and easy to do that. And then also, who set up languages before on a Drupal 7 site when you have the detection area, so it's URL, session, user, browser. Those are very similar in Drupal 7 and Drupal 8, although there's some improvements and some extra bells and whistles in Drupal 8. So in Drupal 7, language was an afterthought. And you're like, wait, how does that happen? I have to install the locale, right? Module, I have to enable that from core. But language is an afterthought, right? So language is an afterthought at the coding level, and I'll get into a little bit of that. But really, you install locale and you think, oh, that should cover everything that I need. But what happens is, who's ever seen the und language, right? So in Drupal 7, in Drupal 6, you can have a language called undefined, so the UND. And that is the root of so many bugs and issues a lot of times. It's like, why doesn't my content know what language it is? I told it. And why didn't it figure it out, right? And that's because Drupal 7, it was like an add-on. But Drupal 8, language is first. Everything, every entity, every piece of code in Drupal 8 is language aware. So that und issue doesn't necessarily the und by bug doesn't happen. Everything just knows what it is. And then so it has one single language module, and basically it's split out from the old locale module. So you can choose your language when you first install Drupal 8, right? And I have a couple of screenshots in a second, but it lets you install Drupal, it lets you choose Drupal in your native language, goes and gets all of the translation strings Drupal has and installs it. So you can actually install the whole site in your native language, so you don't have to fight both language and the learning curve of Drupal. Also, there's removable English. So who has sites that you guys don't want English on? It might not happen here in New England, but for those that have to work with a single language site and that language isn't English, you can actually remove English. So you don't have to have multiple languages that you don't want to deal with. You also have translatable English. So who has heard of the module string overrides? So if you wanted to change login and log out to sign in and sign out in English, you had to add more modules to do that in Drupal 7, and right now it's just right out of Drupal 8, right out of core. And also URL detection is enabled by default, which is very good, and that's still fine. You don't have to fight the URL detection screen like in Drupal 7 you might have had to in the past. And also, you can have an admin language per user, so I can choose, because I'm a native English speaker, if I'm on a site that has 17 languages, I can always have the admin screen in my language, in my native language. That's out of the box, that's core. And also, it has a lot better browser detection, and you can customize browser detection for your own locale codes. And also, it's a much better UX. And it has enhanced view support because views are in core. Wow, that's a lot of things going on in Drupal 8 just by this one module. That's amazing. And there's more, actually. So if we look at language as an afterthought in Drupal 7, let's see. You can see when I have to install language, there's no choice of language on the first installation screen. And you can only do like English. And you have to click to a whole nother URL that takes you somewhere else. You follow the steps to install Drupal in the language. And so you have to pull it down and manually put it in your code for a profile here. And then please go read more documentation. And then, oh wait, how should I continue? Should I reload the language selection page, or should I continue installation in English? What if you didn't speak English? That's a hard screen to read, and that's what do you do next, right? So that's a big deal. So in Drupal 8, it's really liberating. This is the very first thing that you see in Drupal 8. And I'm going to choose my language. I don't remember which one we chose. I think it was French. There you go. And it's going to say, hey, I'm going to go get these translations from Drupal.org. And you click Save and Continue. And instantly it switches to French, right? So you can choose your standard profile. You're going to just select all of the options. We're using Simply Testing here, so we're going to continue on. And then right now, it's telling you I'm installing and configuring Drupal core. But look at this. This is all in your native French, so you don't have to try to figure out what it's saying while the progress bar happens. And so this is to help has everybody seen that like Drupal learning curve thing where it looks like the huge cliff and everybody's falling to their doom because they can't get over that cliff? This helps make that cliff a little bit easier to climb. Puts a couple more stairs there and some ladders. So instead of like having to rock climb it. But yeah, so you can see that it's getting all of the installation done. And voila. And it's 42 modules, which was awesome. So anyway, I'm going to come to that one. So language, if we take a look at what language is, in Drupal 7, it wasn't very clear. Language is like, it's here, but it's a little bit blurry, right? It's just not all the way right. But in Drupal 8, language is crystal clear. It just is it's seamless in the whole system. All right, so let's talk user interface, right? So it's all of the pieces that make up the screen. The interface is text strings coming from modules and themes, right? So if you code a custom module and you wanted to put a text of a button on the page, that is code. That is interface, or that's interface content, right? And so basically, this is the SF Doug text, but basically it's the old T function in Drupal 7, right? But in Drupal 8, it's this at T. So it's basically printing and wrapping words in a T function. So what are the similarities? So the T function still exists, although in Twig, which is the layout system for Drupal 8, some of the syntax is different because Twig is a different type of language. The import process between the strings is very similar as well. Also the export process, you import like PO files and you can export PO files sent off to your translation teams. And they both can use community translations from localized.drupal.org. And what are the differences? Well, in Drupal 7, it takes a lot of different modules just to even get started doing interface translation. So you have locale, which is core, and then the localization update you have to install, and string overrides, and admin language. In Drupal 8, there's just one. It's called interface translation. And that will surface all of the information that you need to translate your site. Automatic updates. It's just a configuration that completely replaces the localization update module. Also, the translatable English language replaces string overrides, right? So I don't know if you started counting how many modules that Drupal 8's replacing, but we have a count at the end. And admin language settings, it's a URL detection order that replaces admin language module. Also, the translation page is much better. So who's familiar with the translate page? And I'll have a screen in a second. So handling interface strings in D7 is cumbersome. So if you look at this page, this is going to look pretty similar in Drupal 8 at the top. But for each one of the strings, you have to actually click in it to edit it. And if you have a lot of things to edit and a lot of strings, that's a lot of clicking. That takes a lot of time, right? But in Drupal 8, it's much more efficient. So what you do is, in per context of the single language that you're in, you still have this similar search. It's still case sensitive, so you have to be careful how you type your cased information in your modules. But you can choose the translation language like before, You can search in both translated and untranslated strings, and look at how easy it pops up right here for you, so you can enter in all your translations at the same time, so it's much more efficient. So if we can kind of imagine interface as part of my total outfit, here's my makeup, my made-up Drupal 7 guy. You know, Drupal 7 has like an old 1980s brick phone. It works, but it's clumsy, and it's kind of hard to use, and maybe it doesn't work super great. But in Drupal 8, it's kind of like a PDA. It's a smartphone. It's got a lot more going on. It's a lot sleeker, and it's a little less baggage to carry. It's much more like a tool instead of a burden. All right. So let's talk about content. And that's all of the information that you add into your website and you display out to your users. And so what is content in Drupal 7? Nodes. Right? That's the most common one. Comments are content. Users are content. Taxonomy terms. And custom entities like commerce products. So are you guys all familiar with these as a concept of content? Good. Well, Drupal 8, they're like, let's actually take that concept of content and apply it to more things, because that concept is easy to grasp and people understand it and people are well aware of it. Let's apply content management to certain things. So basically all of the nodes and taxonomy terms are the same in Drupal 7, or same as Drupal 7, but they also made blocks content, which is wonderful, right? So it gives a whole different interface for block management and block editing. It lets the form API system, or the field API system being used on blocks, so you can make a block with fields, right? So you can have a well-formed block content management interface. Also, menu items, they're so weird to handle in Drupal 8, but now they're just content. And so that's very freeing, because then you can just go, oh, I have to just treat these as content. That's fine. Also, contact messages, so things coming through contact forms. And also you can have custom content entities, very similar to like a Drupal commerce type of things, but you can make your own custom content entities in code. And so some of the similarities here, you have the translate tabs look very similar from Drupal 7 and 8. D7 entity translation. Is everybody familiar with that term, entity translation? So in just a quick kind of definition, Drupal 7 has two different ways to translate content. One is content translation, which is basically make a node 1, make a version of node 1 is Spanish, and call it node 2, and make a translation set. Give it an ID that wraps these two nodes together. And D7 entity translation is, hey, I have one node, node 1, that has all the information for all my translations in that one node, and it also is called field translation. So what are the differences in the two? In D7, you're really having to hunt and peck around the system to get all of your multilingual settings. You have so many modules, like content translation, internationalization, suite of modules. So that's all the multilingual settings. You have to synchronize translations if you're using like a content translation. Also, the whole entity translation suite, and then you can't even translate a page title, because a page title is a property in Drupal, not a field. So you have to install a module to make kind of a stand-in field to fool Drupal that no, you can really translate the title. So you're like, really? Why can't I do that? Why do you make it so hard, Drupal? But in D8, you have one config page to rule them all, right? You don't have to go everywhere to find your configurations. You have one module, not many modules. And it's not even one suite of modules. It's one module, one button, one checkbox to enable. to turn this on. It's called content translation. Also, you can have inline editing. Who's familiar with Drupal 8? And it's one of the best new features of Drupal 8 is that you can basically edit from the user interface. You don't have to go into a node edit screen. You can just click on the body content and start editing in place. And that's really enabling for content editors that are not really technical. And also it helps really enable translators as well. Also, you have tons of block visibility that's here. So a lot of language control around block display. And also, in Drupal 8, there's a much smoother fallback mechanism for language. So if you do not have content, if you're like on a Hungarian site and your primary site is English, if you don't have Hungarian content, it will show English because that's your fallback language, right? So it's actually nice because it falls back in many different levels. It falls back at the content entity level, so a block can fall back to its own specific block settings that are separate from the specific node fallback settings. It might get a little bit complicated because there are so much flexibility in the fallback settings that you have to really be aware of what your settings are to predict what the UI is going to look like if things are translated or not. And in Drupal 7, you get carpal tunnel when you actually configure content translation. So first of all, you have to actually, if you're using entity translation, you have to select which entities can be translated. So you have to find this page, click some more buttons, and then click save. And then once you have enabled this on nodes, you can go to the node, right? And you can edit the content type, and then you can go back in here and you can enable multilingual support or enable with field translation. Okay, well I'm going to choose field translation because that's the closest to Drupal 8. Got to be forward thinking if you're using Drupal 7. And then you have to go into each field on each content type to tell it, I would really like to be multilingual, right? So I have to go into the field, and then I go here to the very bottom. Users may translate all occurrences of this field, and this little checkbox is a global setting of everywhere you use this field. So fields can be reused for good performance and database storage and everything, but you have to be really careful and have multilingual strategies in your content architecture, because if you come in and click, yes, make this translatable, but it might impact a bunch of the other content display, that'll be fun and interesting for a cleanup. And also vice versa, if you turn off translation, it causes a little bit of a different experience than you may want. Then you also, and so here we're enabled with field translation. We're going to the next content type, and so we're clicking more fields now, and we're clicking more fields, and we're clicking more fields. But you know what, in Drupal 8 you have one settings page to rule them all. So it starts kind of blank looking, but you can check content here and it'll show you everything that you need, and you don't have to click deep. You can tell each one of the fields and even the subfields, like for image, if you would like them to be translatable or not. So you can stretch your fingers and be super happy that you don't have to get carpal tunnel from Drupal 8 now. So if we take our makeover model, we've got our kind of smudgy makeup on for Drupal 7, we've got our brick phone, and Drupal 8's really put together. At this point, now we're adding content, right? So we've got some shorts, and the content, the requirements for content, it is your full outfit. Like, it's got everything together. But like in Drupal 7, I'll put some shorts on. That's like bottoms, right? It's like pants. I'll put this t-shirt on. That's cool. I got a multilingual shirt. Oh, and shoes, but this shoe doesn't match this other one because I had to put the shoe module on, the left shoe module on, and then the right shoe module on, but they're slightly incompatible, and so it needs a patch. Oh, wait, and you said long. Wait, I really needed long pants? Okay, I'll just throw these like leg warmers and cover my knees up. And, oh, hey, wait, you needed this other patch and other set of modules because you said long sleeves. Okay, I'll put long sleeves on now. And so what happens is, oh wait, and you need more patches, so now you look like you're really put together. So the requirement is, yeah, I need an outfit with long sleeves. And this technically fits that requirement, but was it easy to put on? Was it easy to use? What if I have to take these things off and do the laundry, right? Now there's all these pieces, and what if things are going to fall apart, and what if I need another patch? But, I need to put a vest on, because that's really awesome. But Drupal 8 is so much more sleek. Just like think of, the Star Trek spiffy outfits. It's one sleek, elegant, put together type of thing where it's easy to put on, easy to take off, and it's just one cohesive piece. The people thought about that outfit when they put that uniform together. So now we're going to talk a little bit about config. The config, what is it, right? This is a weird one too. It's a lot of things. It's like contact categories. It's the fields, like the field labels, the field types, the field descriptions, like the help text. It's menus itself, not the menu items, right? What is my menu name? What is my menu location? It's user emails, and it's views, right? The view structure, vocabularies, and it's anything that's basically not interface or content. They kind of plucked into the how do you manage that? That's a config management for content and translation. And so what are the similarities? Well, there's not that many similarities between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. Because in Drupal 7, there was a ton of inconsistent handling of these because every one of these different configs had a different config, right? A lot of these things were added on Drupal in contrib. And so it didn't have a unified implementation method, right? So you would have to put transliteration to make sure that the machine names didn't have special characters. You have to use things like menu translation because that has a separate type of translation than blocks. In block languages, we'll add language identification to a block because why didn't blocks actually just know what their language was out of core? I don't know. That's Drupal 7. And then also we have to do path translations and then the contact form translation and taxonomy translation and variables for the site name, right? And then, wait, I have to translate my view as well. And I would like my views to be language aware. Look at how many modules I have. I actually have to know what that module is, that it exists, and what its name is, to even find it to install. That is the Drupal cliff that people are like climbing against, and it's harder when you're doing multilingual because you have to even go that much more into research to find which modules do what, right? But in Drupal 8, you have one page to go to get all of these configs. You had to find all of these different configurations everywhere for translating these configurations. There's only one module you have to install. It's called config translation. It's very clear, right? And then the language for each of the settings are basically in each YAML file. So that uses the CMI, the config management initiative's work to actually export and deploy configs if you'd like to. So config translation in D7 is super inconsistent. So you can see there's multilingual variables in this form, and you click here, but like the rest of the site, has like translate tabs normally. And in Drupal 8, actually everything in Drupal 8 has this wonderful, easy to see tab if you need to translate content. So you'd be like on an edit screen. This one is config translation, but you can. This looks like every other place where I'm trying to translate content or trying to translate the interface. And then this config translation has this unified page. So you're like, I can't find where to translate this one piece of content on my site, and I already looked in my string translation on the translate page, and I know it's not a content node because I looked on my content config pages and I can't find it. Oh, I'm going to look at the unified config translation page in Drupal 8. So it's basically at regional language. It's one link. I didn't show that in the training yesterday. It's getting late. Okay, so if we see down all of here, you can have all the different types of block types or config types, and at the bottom we are actually saying, okay, let's just choose the site information, and you can quickly get there. So it's way super easy, right? And so here, this is a demo on Drupal 8.05, so it's been a while. But what's wonderful is the multilingual site was the multilingual and language support was the very first thing that was built in Drupal 8 because everything is built on top of it. It is the foundation of everything. So as people write modules in contrib, the whole language system is already there for them to leverage. You can't forget to put language awareness on your work because it just is there. And so now with config, if we think about config as like an accessory, we've got a fanny pack, right? So we're looking cool, and a Devo hat, right? So that's totally Drupal 7. Yeah, and it's good. It's a look, right? We've got a look going on in Drupal 7, and it's functionally meeting the requirements. That's a little awkward. But you know what? Here in Drupal 8, we have our communicator, and it's like a cool badge, and it's got all sorts of fun stuff. So it's very sleek. So let's talk extensions to the site. So most of your sites might have something like search or media or search engine optimization, analytics. You can have also extensions to multilingual, like extending it into a translation management system, or you can use the TMGMT translation management tool modules and to help extend Drupal core translation workflow. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a real Drupal 7 example from one of our clients. This was a Drupal 7 multilingual site. 28 community multilingual modules, 2 custom multilingual modules, and 12 multilingual patches. This is all of the information that we had to add, and we didn't even have things like search on the site yet, right? That's kind of a common thing, right? So this was just like the most basic of a site. We didn't even add all of the extra stuff. If we did this in Drupal 8, 18 out of the 23 community multilingual modules are handled by core, right? So I would just have to actually install 5 modules. And these are red at this point. I needed to update this one more time. But a lot of those things are actually in Drupal core now. But if we looked at the totality, a total of like 38 D7 multilingual modules are handled or obsoleted by Drupal core. 38 modules down to 4, right? 4 that are in core. 4 that if you choose to install Drupal in a different language than English, most of them get automatically enabled for you, and it's just magically there, right? So Drupal is sleek and powerful, right? So, wow, this is a lot of stuff going on, but Drupal 8 is sleek and powerful, and there's a lot of things that still are going on that are still being rolled in to contrib, but now we've got a pretty good foundation that covers almost everything for multilingual in Drupal 8. Now it's just a matter of extending it. And you can help build a better Drupal. The Multilingual Initiative was highly successful. It was the best initiative they've ever had. Gabor, who put it together, is doing the media initiative right now. And but you can help more. You should go to Aimee June's session or watch it if you're watching the video on how to contribute to the issue queue. So it really helps everybody get started. But you can still look and learn more by going to the groups.drupal.org. There's internationalization and translation groups. If you speak another language and you'd like to help translate Drupal, you can really contribute to localized.drupal.org as well. And yeah, and what a wonderful thing we put together is a Drupal project called the Multilingual Demo. This is basically taking Drupal core and putting everything in core, like views and blocks and taxonomy and menu translation. We basically give a whole site that's fully configured with full translation. And you can install that and just take a look through how everything is configured. So it's really cool. All right, so at this point I have questions, and also I have swag. I have swag if you ask a question or have a statement. You can you can do whatever you want.
Shirts.
That is a good statement, but you're wearing one of those shirts, so it looks this beautiful 2016, but this one is, and it's a beautiful shirt. It's lovely. Okay, so question. Question? You have a question?
In Drupal 7, it was a nightmare to take an existing site and move it to translation. How is that in 8?
Okay, so the question is, it's very difficult or a basic nightmare to create a site that exists already in Drupal 7 and add multilingual support to it. And what is the difference in Drupal 8? So in Drupal 7, the really tricky part of Drupal 7's multilingual strategy is it really depends on your content strategy, right? So are you using entities translation or not? Are you using content translation? Also, which third-party like contrib modules do you add? Because what happens is if you think that you're going to make the site multilingual at some point, you choose all the modules that have really good multilingual support. Like there's 8 different modules for you to have social share buttons. You choose the one that's really strong with multilingual. But if you don't know that when you start, or somebody didn't know that when you started, they might have this old module in there that's like, we don't care about multilingual. Or maybe it's not that they didn't care, they just didn't know they had to care, right? And so that's what makes it a challenge, right? And also some people have very interesting content strategies, especially in Drupal 7. You can do like beans for, block entities aren't nodes, or you can use field collections, you can do entity references, you can do node references, you can do node queues. So there's all of these things that really make it complex. But in Drupal 8, because a lot of those things are handled in core, there's just the way that it works. There's the one way it works, and everything is kind of using the one right way to do it. You use either content translation or config translation or interface translation. There's no other method to work with multilingual, right? Even if you have your own custom language, it's still within that same language domain, right? Even if you have, you're making your own custom entities, it's still in that same domain. So it's much simpler, right? There's not 800 ways, to skin a cat. There's only just 3. You can choose which one matches your cat skinning. Other questions, thoughts? What? Yeah, go ahead.
Not perfectly on topic, but do you have a sense of how multilingual in Drupal 8 compares to what's going on in other CMS communities?
Yeah.
How that translation's going for them?
Right. So the question is, how does Drupal 8 compare to the multilingual initiatives in like WordPress and Joomla or Adobe? Adobe CQ5 is the super old word for it, but AEM, Adobe Experience Manager. They all do multilingual differently based on the technology platforms that they use, right? So Adobe is very Java-based, right? So it's around, it has its strengths and limitations around how that's also working. And also they have a very different content workflow than Drupal does. WordPress, it has support in it, and people can do it, but it's not as easy as Drupal 8 now. But Drupal itself is harder than WordPress, right? So even though multilingual is way easier and far better supported in Drupal 8, in general, Drupal 8 is a heavier system. It's more powerful, which is awesome. But if people aren't looking for power, they just need ease and speed. It's kind of a challenge, right? And Joomla does okay, but Drupal's multilingual systems is far more powerful. You just have to know Drupal, and that's the challenge. It's the cliff again. And you get a t-shirt. Woo!
Add a footnote to that.
You can add a footnote.
So I think one of the key differences when Drupal 8 was in the development process was that a lot of the WordPress extensions or plugins don't necessarily have support. Whereas like Drupal 7 had support in there, but people weren't necessarily making use of it. So at the time Drupal 8 was being developed, Drupal 7 was, even though it's so complex, far and beyond more comprehensive as like getting all of the things translated. And then so Drupal 8 takes that further. So it's probably the most comprehensive out there. I don't have experience with the Adobe product.
Oh, it is the most comprehensive out there, especially for the cost and time to market. Like if you have to actually buy AEM and then have the skilled team to install it and the 8,000 servers you need to run it. And Drupal 8 is heavy as well once you put more and more work on it. But these things are like a fully N-tier distributed, full-on enterprise juicy Java platform, right? So we're comparing a lot of different things here, and so Drupal is by far the strongest in multilingual services. It's just how. And you just have to know Drupal to get there. But actually with the Drupal 8 and core, and it's that we're really making sure that gap is closing, and a site builder can make a site. And our training session yesterday, we made a site with views and everything translated in all these content types in, less than 5 hours or 4 hours. And we did that in the Multilingual Lab in 2 hours. But we went fast. Yeah. But you can make a whole site that's multilingual in Drupal 8 that fast without a line of code.
Yeah, it seems like the Drupal community just took it really, really seriously, and I haven't really seen that in other products.
No, but there are other products that do. There are some like SDL. SDL had I think it's just SDL is their old name, and they must have changed since I last touched them. But they actually. Part of their content management suite is they specialized in translations and localization. Like they had a TMS, like a translation management server, so they had that nicely integrated with their CMS. But then, what does their CMS do? Yeah. And it's a closed proprietary thing. You don't have all these contributors, right? So it might be super strong in that, but it's costly, and then you need specially skilled people. So there's all sorts of these things with barriers to entry and everything like that. So any other questions, thoughts? Here's a shirt for the newbie, because welcome to Drupal.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any thoughts? Or yeah. All right. Anything else before I press the button? The big, shiny, candy apple red button? Okay.
Thank you, Kevin.
Bye.
Bye, Kevin. Thanks.